South Africa is probably the most modern country on the African continent, but for all of its big cities, skyscrapers, and traffic, there's still a wild side to the country that will always be a part of daily life, and every South African intrinsically knows this. It's just ingrained in them. Tourists come for safaris, riding in armored vehicles to observe wildlife from afar. But the average South African child grew up visiting relatives' farms, seeing predators and gigantic mammals roaming freely, sometimes right outside their bedroom windows. Even the city dwellers, who never see a buck or even a farm animal in their day-to-day lives, have found themselves on road trips or stopping by to visit their traditional villages. And once you leave the big urban places, humans are no longer at the top of the food chain. Megan van der Zwan was one of these city dwellers. As a child, she had grown up in a small town surrounded by farms, and she often went camping with her family. She knew the ins and outs of nature, but now, at 22, she was a student at the University of Pretoria. Pretoria is one of the biggest cities in the country, but ride outside for just an hour and you'll find plenty of game reservations and parks. It was to one of these parks that she and her friend Liza were heading on February 20th, 2018. It was an assignment for school. Liza was going to research and write an article since she was studying journalism, and Megan was to do the photography and design the article layout because she already had her degree in information design and was currently pursuing her master's degree in the field. The young women felt pretty sure that they had the perfect subject for their presentation. The Ra de Tau Bush Camp, just a few miles outside Pretoria, is a campsite like no other. Nestled right inside a wildlife reserve, there are several thousand hectares of pure virgin bushveld. Glammed-up tents were placed right out in the open, and you could camp right in the middle of the wild, amongst the elephants, leopards, giraffes, and bucks. But this luxurious and wild experience wasn't the reason that the girls had come. They wanted to interview Kevin Richardson. People call him the Lion Whisperer, and for good reason. Kevin raised most of the lions that were brought into the reserve when they had to be removed from farms and when they were found roaming too close to urban settlements. Abandoned cubs and rescues were also brought to Ra de Tau. Kevin fed and rehabilitated every single one of them, even bottle-feeding the younger ones by hand. Though the two packs of lions were by no means tame kitty cats, they did accept and even like Kevin. He walked freely amongst them, and their familiarity with this one human allowed them to be less of a threat to other people. Besides the lions, de Tau had plenty of other animals that the lions could hunt, and they'd never known any extreme hunger. His approach to the most dangerous predators in the wild is unconventional, to say the least. Kevin's written 13 books about his adventures, and many publications and film crews have come from all over the world to meet Kevin and his lions. You could say that he's the Steve Irwin of South Africa. Megan and Liza wanted to interview the famous Lion Whisperer, and he was more than happy to oblige. Kevin will take any opportunity he can to educate the world about the wonders of nature. When they arrived bright and early, one of the rangers was already waiting to escort them on a short drive so that they could take photos of the animals in their natural habitat. After that, they had a quick lunch at the small but quaint restaurant with Kevin, and they conducted their interview around the very table that they ate at. Kevin is a fascinating man. His life story is almost more interesting than his unusual job. It did not even feel like an official interview. Kevin is personable and friendly, and the whole thing felt more like a conversation between old friends. Liza knew that the article was going to be amazing. Kevin's good nature and his exciting life just about wrote the article all by itself. At 4 in the afternoon, Megan and Liza had just waved goodbye to Kevin, and they and the ranger that had taken them on the drive earlier were standing at the reception area. Megan needed some photographs of the luxury tents, the staff, and the campsite before they drove back to the city. Kevin went off into the bush to take 2 of his lionesses for a walk. These were some of the lions that not only accepted Kevin, they even came to him for scratches and companionship. This late afternoon walk was a daily routine for them. In the hour that the women took the photos, Kevin and his lion companions had already traveled 2 miles into the grasslands. Near the watering hole, an impala buck saw the felines and dashed into the trees seeking safety. One of the lionesses took off after it. Kevin thought nothing of it. Their walk was nearing its end, and they often took off after wildlife while he was with them. But after a few steps, it dawned on him that the buck and the lion were heading in the direction of the campsite. So he turned and jogged back. He wasn't terribly worried. These lions knew him, and they mostly kept away from other visitors, but he wanted to make sure that all was well, just to be safe. The impala streaked through the bush, with the lion hot on its tail, but the lone cat wasn't enough to bring it down. The buck was just too fast and nimble for her today. She'd have to try for another meal that evening, after she'd caught her breath and had some water to cool off. When she finally gave up the chase, the lion found herself right back at the camp where she started her leisurely walk from. She could see the 2 women and the ranger standing in the distance. Sometimes there was food for her at the camp, so she hopefully headed toward the nearest woman, and that unfortunate human just happened to be Megan. Megan did not see the big cat jogging toward her. She was at her car's door just about to put away her camera equipment, so her back was facing the lion. The feline wanted to get the woman's attention, hoping that she had a chunk of meat for her. So the predator got up on her hind legs and placed her paws on the human's back, just like she did with Kevin when she wanted his attention. Liza saw the cat coming and how it nearly knocked Megan over with its enormous body. As horrifying as it was to see, Liza also noticed that the cat wasn't hunting Megan necessarily. She was slow and relaxed in her approach. So Liza called out for Megan to remain as still as she could. Behind Liza, the ranger was several yards away, but he also saw what was happening from afar. He immediately got into his car and started driving toward them. He knew better than anyone how unpredictable these animals were. If it wasn't Kevin himself handling the cats, then he wasn't going to take any chances. The lioness felt the woman jerk with fright and shock beneath her paws. She also felt Megan quake beneath the colossal weight of the predator. This wasn't Kevin. This one was much smaller and weaker, and it could smell the fear radiating off the human. That was all it took to set off the predatory instinct within the animal. It was already hungry, and the living being beneath its paws was fearful. Only prey was ever scared. This human wasn't like Kevin. This one was food. It reared back and sank its teeth into the woman's neck and shoulder. It was already perfectly poised to go for the throat, and its aim was true and deadly. Megan, who was standing as still as she possibly could when the massive paws pounded on her back, was shaking uncontrollably under the cat's immense weight. Tears of fear were in her eyes, and then she heard the low growl. The breath blew her blonde hair forward and into her face. Megan knew what was going to happen before the lion's teeth closed around her throat. The pain was unimaginable. She could feel the force closing off her windpipe and ripping through her flesh. Megan's legs folded beneath her, and she was crushed beneath the full weight of the animal on top of her. The lioness had Megan in its death grip. There was no need to shake or subdue the human. Her crushing weight and the woman's lack of oxygen were enough to incapacitate her prey completely. Megan, through the pain and terror, opened her mouth desperately to get air, but it was of no use. Nothing was entering her lungs, and she could feel herself slipping into darkness from the lack of air and the blood that was streaming from the fangs in her neck. Megan heard the ranger's car and his yells as he came close. She heard Liza hysterically crying and screaming in the background, and then she heard Kevin's booming shout over the others' cries. The lion, hearing Kevin, let go of the woman, fully expecting to show off its kill to its human friend. But the man was not friendly today. He was speeding toward her, bellowing like a bull. She'd never heard such a rage from the man. She understood that he was angry, but she could not fathom why. So the lioness, not wanting to be the brunt of her friend's anger any longer, took off into the bush. Megan drew in a ragged breath the moment that she was released, but the desperate gulp brought more blood than air into her lungs. Her eyes rolled back, and she finally lost consciousness. Kevin and the staff at re-enactments found towels and wrapped Megan's wounds as best as they could, but as they waited for help to arrive, everyone knew, just by listening to the raspy and bubbled breaths that Megan was taking, that there was almost no way that she'd make it into the ambulance that was still 20 minutes away. So they sat and waited in agony for those 20 minutes. They listened to Megan's horrifying, gurgling breathing that was becoming shallower and shallower by the second. Megan's heart stopped 7 minutes before paramedics arrived, and though they tried everything they could, there was no saving her. They announced her dead at the scene. After further inspection, it was determined that even if Megan had made it to a hospital in time, her throat was so shredded and her lungs filled with so much blood that there was very little that even a full operating room would have been able to do for her. Megan was gone, and she left behind her absolutely distraught parents, siblings, friends, and fiancé. To say that she was deeply mourned is an understatement. The University of Pretoria had an hour of silence for their former student, and even her childhood high school commemorated Megan van der Zwan. Kevin Richardson was taken to court over the incident, but he was only charged with a penalty for one expired license related to the campsite. It was concluded that all parties were aware of the dangers they were walking into when they went to re-enactments bush camp. The Lioness responsible for the attack, named Indira, was eventually spared from being euthanized after over a year of court hearings, and Kevin and his team were found to be not responsible for the Megan van der Zwan's terrifying final affliction.